when it comes to avoidant attachment, the thing that confuses most people isn't what they say, it's what they don't say. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that love is always communicated through words, gestures, and reassurance. But when you're dealing with someone avoidant, their silence often carries more weight than anything they could ever speak. Think about it. An avoidant's entire identity is built on the idea of not needing anyone. They pride themselves on independence, on cutting ties, on walking away from emotional intensity as if it were nothing. They tell themselves, I can live without this. I don't need them. That's their armor. But here's the paradox: when they truly love someone, they can't just erase you. They can run, they can shut down, they can retreat into silence, but the very act of going quiet, while still orbiting around your presence, reveals a depth of connection they can't shake. Silence, in this case, is not absence. It's not indifference. Silence becomes the stage where their inner war is playing out. Every moment they don't text you, every day they don't reach out, they're testing themselves. Can I survive without this person? Can I detach? Can I cut the cord? And yet the longer it goes on, the more their silence betrays them. Because if you were meaningless, they wouldn't have to test themselves at all. Indifference doesn't need silence. Indifference moves on without a thought. But when an avoidant is silent, it's because you are still echoing in their mind. Here's the deeper psychology. Human beings reveal their strongest emotions not only through expression, but also through suppression. What we try hardest to hide often exposes what matters most to us. If an avoidant is constantly suppressing the urge to reach out, if they're holding themselves back from confessing what they feel, that suppression is evidence of intensity. You don't suppress what you don't care about. You only restrain what has power over you. And there's something else. Silence is also how avoidants protect themselves from the terrifying vulnerability of love. To say, I miss you, would expose their dependency. To say, I can't stop thinking about you, would strip them of the control they worship. So they choose silence. But listen carefully, choosing silence isn't the same as choosing indifference. It's choosing protection. And you don't protect yourself from something that doesn't matter. You protect yourself from what could break you. This is why you've got to reframe how you interpret that silence. Instead of seeing it as rejection, see it for what it really is. The loudest unspoken confession of love an avoidant can give. Their silence is saying, I still feel you, but I'm too afraid to face it. You're still in me, but I don't know how to handle it. And isn't that in itself the strongest sign that they can't stop loving you? Think about your own life. When someone truly means nothing to you, you don't wrestle with silence. You don't calculate whether to call or not. You don't hover on their profile or replay conversations in your head or wait to see if they'll break first. No, you just move on. That's indifference. But when someone is everything you're trying not to feel, silence becomes a daily battle. And the avoidant lives in that battle every single day. Philosophically, it's almost tragic. Love, for them, is both the thing they crave and the thing they fear most. So they live in contradiction. They love you in silence while pretending not to care. They want closeness but run from it. They hold on by letting go. And yet, if you listen beyond the words, if you understand human nature at its core, you'll see that silence is not emptiness. It's fullness that has no safe outlet. That's why silence speaks louder than words. Because words can lie. Words can be faked. But silence, especially prolonged silence, is harder to disguise. It's where the unconscious reveals itself. And in that space of avoidance, the truth becomes clear. If they can't detach, if they can't truly walk away, then the silence itself is the proof of love they can't extinguish. So the next time you're confronted with an avoidant silence, don't just listen to what isn't being said. Ask yourself, what must they be feeling so strongly that they'd rather endure silence than risk speaking it? Because the answer is simple. It's you. And here's the powerful truth I want you to leave with: silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means presence so overwhelming that words aren't enough to contain it. Fear is a powerful force. It can either paralyze you or expose what matters most to you. And when it comes to avoidance, fear is the compass that reveals their hidden love. On the surface, they act like they're in control, detached, unaffected. They'll tell themselves, "I don't need this. I'm fine on my own." But underneath that performance, fear begins to whisper, and it betrays them. Because when they can't stop loving you, fear doesn't fade. It transforms. It becomes obsession. Think about the psychology of obsession. What is it really? It's the mind's inability to release what has lodged itself deep in the emotional core. It's the repetition of thought, the constant replay of moments, the fixation on one particular person or memory. And here's the paradox: the very thing they're terrified of, intimacy, dependency, vulnerability, becomes the thing they can't stop circling back to. They may run from you in the physical world, but in their inner world, they're running toward you every single day. This is why so many people get confused by avoidance. They'll say, "If he loves me, why does he pull away? Why does she disappear? Why does he act like I don't exist?" The truth is, avoidance isn't the absence of feeling. It's the overabundance of it. They're drowning in emotions they can't regulate, so the only survival strategy they know is withdrawal. But withdrawal doesn't erase the love. It intensifies it, because now they're alone with it. They have no outlet, no release. That love turns inward and twists into obsession. And you can see it in their behavior if you know what to look for. They may not text you directly, but they'll linger on your social media. They may not call, but they'll find excuses to ask mutual friends about you. They may act like they've moved on, but in quiet moments, they're replaying your laugh, the look in your eyes, the way you made them feel something they thought they were immune to. Avoidants don't do casual when it comes to love. If they've truly attached, it grips them like a vice, and that vice doesn't let go no matter how far they run. Now, let's go deeper. Why does fear become obsession? It's because the avoidant brain associates love with danger. To them, closeness feels like losing control, like exposing the soft underbelly of the soul. And the human mind is wired to fixate on what it perceives as both a threat and a desire. It's the same reason people can't stop thinking about the things they're told they can't have. Prohibition creates obsession. Fear creates obsession. And love, mixed with fear, becomes an irresistible paradox they can't resolve. It's almost like a psychological tug of war. One part of them is saying, "Get away before you get hurt." The other part is screaming, "Don't you dare lose this person." And every time they try to bury the second voice, it grows louder. That's why they'll go weeks without reaching out, only to suddenly reappear with intensity. They're not coming back because they calculated it logically. They're coming back because obsession overpowered avoidance. Love, hidden under layers of fear, broke through. And here's something most people miss: obsession is not random. It's targeted. If you've become the person an avoidant can't stop thinking about, it means you penetrated the armor. You reached a part of them they thought was unreachable. And that's why they obsess. Not because you're convenient, not because you're just another fling, but because, against all their defenses, you became irreplaceable. Philosophically, this is fascinating because it shows us that human beings are not ruled by reason. We are ruled by what we fear and what we love. And often, they're the same thing. For the avoidant, you represent both the greatest danger and the greatest longing. And that collision creates the kind of obsession that doesn't just fade with time. In fact, time makes it sharper. The longer they run, the more the obsession grows. So when you're asking yourself, does he love me? Does she care? Or am I just imagining it? Don't just look at their words. Look at the energy. Look at the obsession they can't hide. Avoidants will fight to maintain their independence, but you'll notice they can't cut the emotional cord. They'll still watch, still think, still circle back. Fear doesn't make them let go. Fear makes them hold on in secret. That's why the strongest sign an avoidant can't stop loving you is not when they say it out loud, but when their fear transforms into a relentless fixation. When they can't escape you in their own mind, that's when you know. Because nobody obsesses over what they don't care about. So here's the reflection I want you to leave with. Obsession isn't just fear out of control. It's love refusing to die. And when you see fear turn into obsession, don't mistake it for weakness. It's the avoidant's greatest confession, spoken without words. One of the most powerful signs that an avoidant can't stop loving you is this: they begin to break their own rules. Now, understand this clearly. Avoidants don't live randomly. They live by systems. They build rules in their minds that protect them from emotional exposure. Rules like, don't text first. Don't call back right away. Don't say, I love you. Don't let anyone too close. Don't depend on anyone for happiness. These are the commandments of the avoidant's emotional survival. But when love takes hold of them in a way they can't deny, those rules begin to crack. You'll see them do things that even surprise themselves. They send the text they swore they'd never send. They show up when they told themselves they'd stay away. They allow you to see glimpses of the vulnerability they vowed to keep buried. And every time they do this, it's not weakness. It's evidence. It's evidence that the love they feel for you is stronger than the fortress they built around themselves. Why does this matter? Because breaking rules is not casual for an avoidant. For you and me, doing something spontaneous might be normal. But for them, their entire identity is wrapped up in control. They've created psychological guardrails that keep them from ever feeling dependent. And when they start ignoring those guardrails, it's not because they suddenly forgot who they are. It's because you disrupted their system. You became the exception. Here's what's fascinating. When you look at human behavior, the things we're most serious about are the hardest to compromise on. If someone has a diet, they might cheat once in a while, but they usually stay consistent because their health matters. If someone values honesty, they might lie about a small detail, but they won't betray something core to their identity. For avoidance, the diet they follow is emotional distance. It's their way of staying safe. So when they break that diet, when they give into closeness, it means something extraordinary has happened inside them. Philosophically, this speaks to something deeper about the human condition. Rules are not just restrictions. They are expressions of fear. Every rule the avoidant creates is a defense mechanism against heartbreak, against disappointment, against losing themselves in someone else. But love is the one force powerful enough to override fear. Love makes people contradict themselves. It makes them act irrationally. It makes them throw away their logic, because emotion always overpowers structure when it's real. You might notice this shift in subtle ways. The avoidant who once refused to open up suddenly tells you a personal story about their childhood. The person who always delayed responding to messages suddenly replies instantly. The one who used to avoid physical touch now lingers longer than they intended. Each of these rule breaks might seem small on the surface, but in the psychology of avoidance, they are massive. They are signs that the internal wall is cracking and love is seeping through. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Most avoidants don't even realize they're breaking their rules until after they've done it. That's because the force of love bypasses conscious resistance. The heart moves before the mind has time to stop it. They'll hit send on that late night message, and only afterward will they ask themselves, why did I do that? That wasn't me. I wasn't supposed to. That's the proof. Because if it wasn't them, then who was it? It was love. It was the part of themselves they've been suppressing. It was the truth overpowering the fear. And you need to understand this. When an avoidant breaks their own rules for you, you are not just another relationship. You are the exception they never thought would exist. You are the person strong enough to pull them out of the system they've lived in for years, maybe decades. That doesn't happen lightly. That doesn't happen without real emotional gravity. So if you're watching closely, don't underestimate those small cracks in their armor. Those cracks are everything, because they reveal that their so-called rules were never stronger than the connection they feel with you. The rules were just walls, and walls always crumble when the foundation underneath them is shaking. Love is that earthquake. And when the avoidant starts to act against their own programming, it's not a mistake. It's a confession. Here's the takeaway: people reveal the truth, not in what they say, but in what they can't stop themselves from doing. And when an avoidant, someone who lives by self-protection, starts betraying their own strategies, it's because you've reached the part of them that fear couldn't guard. That's the strongest evidence of love you could ever ask for. So remember this: when they break their own rules, it's not weakness. It's proof that the bond is stronger than their fear. And if fear can bend, it means love has already won. One of the strongest signs that an avoidant can't stop loving you is this: no matter how far they run, no matter who else they meet, you become their emotional compass. You become the silent North Star that keeps pulling them back, even when they try to chart a different course. Avoidants live with a constant need for independence, for control, for proving to themselves that they don't need anyone. So they drift, they distance, they explore. But here's the paradox: in their attempt to escape love, they discover that love has already rooted itself too deeply to be replaced. You become the invisible standard against which they measure every interaction. Every new relationship, every new person, every new experience, consciously or not, gets compared to you. Think about what that means. Human beings don't compare what is irrelevant. We don't measure against what doesn't matter. We only benchmark our lives against what leaves an imprint. And when you've left that kind of imprint on an avoidant, their internal compass has shifted forever. Even when they're silent, even when they're absent, they're navigating their choices in relation to you. It's not always obvious, but it shows up in subtle ways. They may go on dates with other people, but afterward, they'll feel something is missing, something they can't name. They'll replay moments with you and realize that new experiences don't feel the same. They may try to build new routines, new patterns, but you remain the underlying comparison point. And here's what's powerful: the avoidant may never admit it to you, but they know it internally. They sense that nothing aligns quite like the connection they had with you. This is because love, when it's real, reorganizes the internal world. It changes the way we see, the way we feel, the way we judge. For avoidants, who normally structure their world around self-preservation, that shift is shocking. Suddenly, their compass is not pointing towards safety. It's pointing toward you. And even when they resist it, they can't reset it. That compass keeps pulling them back, no matter how much they fight it. Now let's go deeper into the psychology. Avoidants rely on detachment to protect themselves, but love creates attachment whether they want it or not. Attachment rewires the brain. It creates neural pathways where certain people become associated with comfort, with meaning, with identity itself. And once those pathways form, they don't vanish easily. That's why time and distance don't erase a deep connection. They often make it stronger. The compass doesn't disappear just because you're not in front of them. In fact, absence makes the compass more obvious. They feel lost without the direction you once gave. Philosophically, this is one of the great ironies of love. We spend our lives believing we are free agents, that we can choose who we connect with when, and how. But the truth is, when someone truly becomes your compass, choice disappears. You don't decide to love them. You don't decide to measure the world through them. It just happens. It becomes involuntary. And for the avoidant, who prides themselves on choice and control, this involuntary pull is terrifying. But it's also undeniable. That's why when you've become an avoidance emotional compass, you'll notice that even in their silence, they remain tethered. They might not reach out, but you'll hear from others that they still ask about you. They might not confess, but you'll sense their presence in subtle actions, in unexpected returns, in sudden messages that break months of distance. These are not coincidences. They are the pull of the compass in action. Here's something worth remembering. People don't always reveal love in how they move toward you. Sometimes they reveal it in how they fail to move away. And when an avoidance compass keeps circling back to you, even after running, even after detaching, even after silence, that's the strongest evidence you've become their true north. So don't be fooled by the drift. Don't be discouraged by the distance. The real measure of love isn't whether someone gets lost. It's whether they keep finding their way back to the same place again and again. That place is you. And this is the insight I want you to carry with you. When you become someone's compass, you've entered a part of their soul that they can't reprogram. They can resist, they can run, they can deny, but they can't erase. And that compass, no matter how far it wanders, always points back to truth. The truth is you. One of the most fascinating signs that an avoidant can't stop loving you is the way their guard begins to crack in subtle, almost imperceptible moments. Avoidants are masters of control. They've spent years, maybe their entire lives, perfecting the art of keeping their walls high, their emotions hidden, their hearts protected. On the surface, they seem unshakable, detached, unaffected, even cold. But here's the truth. No one can live in armor forever. And when love gets strong enough, that armor starts to crack. You'll notice it not in grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but in fleeting moments that feel almost accidental. The way their eyes linger on you when they think you're not looking, the sudden softness in their tone when they drop the mask for just a second, the unexpected story from their past they never share with anyone. These small moments are not random. They are love breaking through the surface, love fighting to be seen despite their desperate attempts to bury it. This is why you can't just listen to what an avoidant says. You have to watch what slips through when they lose control, because the truth always leaks out. And the very fact that it leaks, despite their best efforts, tells you something important. You matter more than their fear. If you didn't, the mask would never slip. If you were just another person in their life, their guard would stay intact. But when you've touched a part of them they didn't even know could feel, the guard can't stay unbroken. Let's go deeper into this psychologically. Defense mechanisms exist to keep pain out. But defense mechanisms are never perfect. They can block surface, level emotions, but they can't fully suppress what the heart insists on expressing. In fact, the stronger the feeling, the more pressure builds behind the walls. It's like try and hold a beach ball underwater. You can keep it submerged for a while, but eventually it slips and bursts to the surface. That slip, that flash of vulnerability, that unplanned confession, that unexpected softness, is the avoidance beach ball breaking through. Now, most avoidants will immediately retreat after those slips. They'll crack open, reveal something vulnerable, and then panic. They'll pull back, get cold again, maybe even disappear for a while. But that retreat isn't proof of indifference. It's proof of how much those cracks terrified them. Think about it. If they didn't care, why would they need to retreat? Why would they need to patch the wall back up so quickly? They retreat because they revealed more than they intended. And in that revelation lies the evidence of their love. Philosophically, this reminds us of something essential about human beings. Truth is rarely neat, rarely polished. It shows up in fragments, in slips, in unguarded moments. And often, those fragments are more honest than any carefully planned confession. When an avoidant lets down their guard, even for a second, you're not just seeing a piece of them. You're seeing the most authentic part of them, the part they hide from the world. That's not an accident. That's love showing itself in its rawest form. Here's an example. Imagine an avoidant who has trained themselves never to say, "I miss you." For them, those 3 words feel like chains. But one night, after a long day, in a moment of exhaustion, they let it slip. Maybe it's in a quiet text, maybe in a half-joking way, maybe in the softness of their voice. And then they pull back immediately, pretending it never happened. That single slip carries more weight than 1,000 scripted "I love yous." Because it wasn't planned. It wasn't controlled. It was real. And this is what you need to understand. The cracks in the armor are not flaws. They're revelations. They are the windows into the truth that the avoidant desperately wants to hide but can't fully suppress. And when you learn to pay attention to those subtle moments, you begin to see the love they can't verbalize. You begin to understand that behind the walls, behind the fear, there is a heart that feels deeply, maybe more deeply than most. So when you witness those cracks, don't dismiss them. Don't tell yourself, "Oh, it was nothing." No, it was everything. Because that's the proof that the mask isn't real, that the distance is a performance, that the love underneath is stronger than the act on top. Those cracks are the moments that matter most. Here's the takeaway: love is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks. And when an avoidance guard slips, even for a second, it's the universe handing you undeniable evidence. They can't stop loving you, no matter how hard they try. And this is the reflection I want you to leave with. Don't underestimate the power of small moments. Because sometimes the smallest crack reveals the biggest truth. When an avoidant is in love, but fighting every instinct to hide it, the strongest sign isn't always what they say, but what they can't suppress. They may never put it into words, but their presence, their energy, their behavior betrays them. One of the most undeniable signs that an avoidant can't stop loving you is this: no matter how much they try to push you away, they keep coming back into your orbit. It's as if something invisible is pulling them toward you, even when every fiber of their being is screaming for distance. That gravitational pull, that compulsion to return, is love breaking through their walls. Think about this. Avoidants are wired to protect themselves at all costs. Their identity, their security, their sense of control is tied to distance. They tell themselves that independence is safety, that closeness is danger. Yet when love overwhelms that instinct, when they can't stay away, you are witnessing the collapse of their defenses in real time. You become the exception to their rules. You're no longer just another person. They can detach from anyone else. But you linger. You occupy space in their mind, in their body, in their spirit. And every time they circle back, no matter how subtly or clumsily, it's a declaration that love has conquered fear. This is why you must pay attention to the patterns, not the words. An avoidant may tell you they don't want closeness. They may insist they need space. But if they show up anyway, if they text after silence, if they hover near your world, if they find reasons to check in, they are revealing the truth they're trying to deny. Because love always leaks through the cracks of their defenses. The stronger the feeling, the harder it becomes to disguise. The human psyche